third reading of this bill. Troisième lecture de ce projet de loi.
The time for government orders has expired. Statements by members. Déclaration de député, l'honorable député de HoC.
The honourable member for HoC. Mr. Speaker, this week, a U.S. Senate report concluded that torture is not an effective method of obtaining credible information. In March 2009, at the Public Safety and National Security Committee, I got CSIS to admit that Canada uses information obtained by torture from third countries. In December 2010, we learned that the Minister of Public Safety had sent a letter to the director of CSIS authorizing them in certain cases to use information that could result from or come from torture or mistreatment. Now, this government must put an immediate end to this practice, which encourages torture in third countries, and demand that CSIS no longer use this type of information. This practice is immoral, ineffective, and weakens our national security by using risk analysis based on erroneous information. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Richmond Hill residents have consistently told me that infrastructure is a priority of theirs, along with jobs and economic growth. I am pleased to inform them that our Conservative government is listening and delivering. Through the Gas Tax Fund, we are delivering stable, reliable, and significant federal funding to help build local projects. In 2010, nearly $20 million has been allocated specifically for municipal infrastructure in Richmond Hill. Mr. Speaker, you can find gas tax-funded projects in every corner of Richmond Hill, from the significant upgrades at the Oak Ridges Community Centre, the Bayview Hill Community Centre, the Richvale Community Centre, and the Lois Hansey Aquatic Centre, to a new multi-use trail at Oak Ridges Corridor Park East. From major road reconstruction, pedestrian bridge replacements, and trail construction, to environmental initiatives, the Gas Tax Fund is improving the quality of life for residents in Richmond Hill and indeed across our great country. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my constituents in Richmond Hill, let me take this opportunity to wish you and every member of this House a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year.
Wow.
The honourable member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise in this House to point out just how dynamic entrepreneurs in my riding are. The Café chez Charlotte, La Patente, Rose et Pamplemousse, the veterinary clinic in Vieux-Limoilou, La Réserve, the Brûlerie Limoilou, Qui le Cru, Espace Niviti, Momenteo, and others are just a few examples of new small and medium-sized businesses that maintain the economic vitality of Beauport-Limoilou. In recent years, I've contacted most of the companies in my riding that create good jobs and are key players in Canada's economic future. These passionate entrepreneurs have explained their reality to me, which has helped me work on better solutions, concrete solutions to promote their development. Once again, I want to thank them for their work, and I take this opportunity to invite citizens of my riding to buy local.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, Christmas is a joyous time of year when families and friends get together and celebrate the holiday season. From parades to holiday shopping to dinners and parties, the Christmas season is filled with many exciting festivities and events. It is also a time where we can reflect on the many blessings we have received throughout the year and look forward with hope to what lies ahead. We have so much to be thankful for, from family to friends to health. Mr. Speaker, the list is endless. In the spirit of giving this season, let us also remember to share generously with those that are less fortunate and make this a Christmas to remember for all. I would like to wish all members and all Canadians a safe and very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 long-suffering years under this Conservative government, the hard-working middle-class families of Southern Ontario are excited about the prospect for change. Next year, the voters of this region will have a clear choice. They can support a party that slashed Via Rail service to Kitchener, London, Sarnia, and Windsor. They can choose a party that cut the budget to the Federal Economic Development Agency for this region by $80 million. They can vote for a party that has failed to approve a single project under the much-hyped but under-delivered Advanced Manufacturing Fund. Or, Mr. Speaker, they can choose the Liberal Party that will invest in infrastructure, a party that will support our hard-hit manufacturing sector, and a party that is focused on improving the lives of hardworking middle-class families of Southern Ontario. Mr. Speaker, after a decade of cuts and neglect, the choice is clear. The people of Southern Ontario want change. They want a new Liberal government.
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, 700 years before his birth, the prophet Isaiah declared a virgin would conceive and bring forth a son, that his name would be called Emmanuel, God with us. 500 years before it happened, Micah declared he'd be born in Bethlehem, while Zechariah wrote that he'd arrive in Jerusalem as a king, riding on a donkey, the price of his betrayal and the wounds on his hands. Indeed, all of history is divided by his time on earth. BC, AD, BCE, CE if you will. For millennia, he's inspired the greatest works of art, music, self-sacrifice, and service to humanity. The Bible is his story. It remains the most published and influential literature of all time. While 2,000 years have passed, his life, his mission, his resurrection continue to impact lives around the world. Mr. Speaker, he is the reason for the season. I wish all members of the House, indeed all Canadians, and as many as can receive it, his peace that passes understanding. Merry Christmas.
The honourable member for Laval. We are reaching the end of this parliamentary session, which is marked by a record number of gag orders imposed by the Conservative government to get to their controversial legislation adopted, to cut essential services to the people, and to undermine democratic expression, the vote, by what we could call unfair elections. More than 850,000 Canadians are currently using food banks. This is unacceptable in the country we live in, and an illustration of the failure of government's policies. So before we all leave to spend Christmas with our families, I issue this wish, perhaps too optimist, but while they celebrate in their homes Christmas and the New Year's, I hope the Conservatives will take some time to think about Canadians, to think about cuts to unemployment, the lack of affordable housing, job security, and injustice. Merry Christmas to all.
Honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Lennox, and Addington. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, please join me today in remembering Jack and Marion Seabrook of Manitoulin Island. Jack and Marion were married in 1953. When they were separated in 2003 by Jack's death, they reportedly had never had a single fight. Last month, Jack and Marion were reunited. The Seabrooks had 3 children and adopted 3 more from the Aboriginal community. The kids say their mother never once lost her temper, saying summer was just too hot to get mad and winter was just too cold. Jack created a museum of island history centered on the most impressive collection of tractors that I've ever seen. Marion taught for 3 decades, creating Ontario's first Native Studies curriculum in 1969. Jack supported her morally and financially, while she and her students compiled and published a collection of stories of the island, followed by novels, a play, and a board game based on island life. Jack and Marion built a loving family, enriched the island community, and today it is an honour to speak in their memory. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for York Centre.
Speaker, when sundown arrives on December 16th, in my home and in homes across Canada, family and friends will gather together to light candles in celebration of the first night of Hanukkah. This 8-day celebration commemorates the triumph of the Maccabees against the oppressive empire of Antiochus more than 2,000 years ago. Jerusalem was liberated and the temple was rededicated, and only enough oil to last for one night instead lasted 8. Born out of the triumph of light over darkness, of freedom over oppression, and of tolerance over persecution, this celebration reminds us that miracles can occur even in the darkest of moments, and that justice must always overcome tyranny. Hanukkah also reminds us that here in Canada we are truly blessed to live in a country of freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Hanukkah is a joyous time of family gatherings, gift-giving, latkes, and games for the children, most notably hotly contested dreidel contests. At this time, I wish all Canadians celebrating Hanukkah, Hanukkah Sameach, all Freilich and Hanukkah.
Here, here.
The honourable member for Parkdale High Park.
Mr. Speaker, it's my honour to rise in the House today to mark the Silver Jubilee anniversary of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's Nobel Peace Prize. I look forward to joining the Tibetan community this weekend to celebrate this special occasion. In 1989, His Holiness was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his non-violent struggle for freedom in Tibet. Sadly, the situation in his home has only become worse. At least 133 Tibetans have self-immolated since 2009. The Dalai Lama continues to advocate for a peaceful resolution to the Tibetan issue through dialogue and mutual respect, even in the face of such tragedy. I urge our government to engage China on the issue of Tibet and to urge them to re-enter into dialogue with envoys of the Dalai Lama based on his middle way approach. I also want to wish all of us here who are privileged to work in Canada's Parliament Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and the very best of the holiday season.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Omar Ahmed Khadr pleaded guilty to heinous crimes, including the murder of American Army medic Sergeant Christopher Spear. This Conservative government has vigorously defended against any attempt to lessen his punishment for these crimes. That is why the Government of Canada is ensuring that he stays in federal prison where he belongs. We do not agree that a youth sentence is appropriate for someone who is seen on video making the same type of improvised explosive devices that killed many of the 158 Canadian Armed Forces members who died in Afghanistan. I am pleased with the decision of the Supreme Court to hear the government's appeal of the reckless decision to send a terrorist to juvenile detention. While the Liberal leader refused to rule out special compensation for this convicted terrorist, and the NDP actively tries to force Canadian taxpayers to compensate him, we on this side believe the victims of crime, not the perpetrators, are the ones who deserve compensation.
The Honourable Member for British Columbia Southern Interior.
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to see an update in the Castlegar News on our West Kootenay Regional Airport. A big thank you to City Councillor Florio Vasilakakis for explaining the regional navigation performance system necessary to upgrade our airport. Due to a narrow valley and low cloud ceiling, we experienced more than our share of cancellations and delays. Over the last years, I've been talking with representatives of NAV Canada about our airport. As of last year, Canada had not yet developed a public RNP system for airports such as ours. I'm happy to say that this has now changed. I was recently told by NAV Canada that it's trying to arrange a meeting with Air Canada and the City of Castlegar to discuss the airport RNP approach. The key is for Air Canada to equip its planes with compatible equipment, which their new Q400 aircraft already has. Should this happen, Mr. Speaker, we could see a marked improvement at our airport as early as the fall of 2015. A win-win situation. Air Canada increases its profits and all of our residents benefit. Air Canada, we are counting on you to make this happen.
Yeah. The Honourable Member for Prince George, Peace River.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we all know that the NDP will bring back the wasteful and ineffective long gun registry should they ever get the chance. The member from Skeena, Bulkley Valley, piled on yesterday when he confirmed to media that the NDP will bring forward measures to track all firearms, in other words, a registry. What's even worse is that he attempted to fearmonger by saying that the Common Sense Firearms Licensing Act would have made it easier for the terrorists that attacked Ottawa to transport a firearm. That type of irresponsible and misleading comment requires a fundamental misunderstanding of how gun laws work. We are making our firearms laws safe and sensible for Canadians. I would hope that the member from Skeena, Bulkley Valley would return to his previous position on the issue when he said he has received clear and decisive direction from his constituents to oppose the long gun registry, a position he agrees with personally. It's clear that only this Conservative government will stand up for law-abiding hunters, farmers, and sport shooters. And I, as other Northern British Columbians, wonder if he will reverse his long gun registry flip-flop.
The Honourable Member for Wascana.
Mr. Speaker, from Little Black Bear First Nation in Treaty 4 in Saskatchewan, Perry Bellegarde has just taken on the toughest political job in Canada. He was elected convincingly yesterday as the new National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. In 3 decades of activism, he has served as a tribal councillor, as Chief of Little Black Bear, as Chief twice of the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, and as Regional Chief of the AFN. He also has experience in Crown corporations and in community organizations ranging from Globe Theatre and the YMCA to the Aboriginal People's Television Network and the Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority. As Chief Bellegarde now works to energize the AFN, this new national leadership offers Canada an opportunity to make historic progress, to build respect and trust and momentum at long last to close the gaps between First Nations and all other Canadians. Let us not miss this chance.
The honourable member for Desnethe, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada's economy is ranked among the best in the world. Despite weathering global economic crisis, our government has worked tirelessly to ensure that Canadian families were not affected by the needless taxes out of the control of government expenditure. Instead, Mr. Speaker, our government has significantly reduced the tax burden for all Canadians. This government believes in the importance of a strong economy and refuses to weigh it down with another tax on Canadian families. Unless the NDP and Liberals, who have repeatedly called for increase in taxes on Canadians, including a carbon tax that would be detrimental to the well-being of Canadians and small businesses. Bringing in a job-killing carbon tax is irresponsible by resisting a carbon tax despite opposition demands. This government is standing up for hardworking Canadians. Mr. Speaker, our Conservative government will never punish Canadians with a job-killing carbon tax called by for the opposition.
Honourable member for Burnaby, New Westminster.
Contrary to the Conservatives and the Liberals, who have shown, once again, that they're disconnected from the needs of Canadian families, the NDP has had another productive parliamentary session this fall. We have achieved results for Canadians. Just think about the compensation for victims of thalidomide and the phase-out of the DOT 111 rail cars, singled out in the Lake Megantic tragedy.
Child care plan, with the goal of ensuring that parents don't pay more than $15 a day for childcare. After 20 years of empty promises, it's time. And we fought to maintain home mail delivery for Canadians and called for a moratorium. We stood up for veterans, and we stood up against constant Conservative corruption. We held the government to account for the military mission to Iraq, and we will continue to hold the Conservatives to account and build a government in waiting for 2015, because Canadians deserve better. On a tout ça, à 2015, Monsieur le Président.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
There's good news this Christmas, Mr. Speaker. Under our Prime Minister, all families will receive more money in their pockets, right where it belongs, thanks to our family tax plan. The Liberals would take it away. In fact, the Liberals have even said that Canadians can be convinced to accept a tax hike. Now, I don't understand that thinking, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I find it unconscionable. The Liberals would take money away from hardworking families and instead build up government bureaucracy. Thankfully, all families in Calgary Centre with children will benefit from our recent announcements. Families will be better off with the universal child care benefit increase and expansion. In fact, families who have children under 6 will receive nearly $2,000 per child per year, and families with kids from 6 to 17 will receive $720 per year per child. Only our Conservative government knows that moms and dads are the best ones to make decisions about what to do with their money, not the Liberals.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, over the last 8 years, $1.1 billion that should have been used to help veterans was returned to government coffers. All because of the minister's incompetence and his inability to properly deal with requests. 2 years ago, he was warned that his department was drastically underestimating the number of veterans in need of help. He did absolutely nothing to fix that. In fact, he made it worse. When will the Prime Minister ask the Veterans Affairs Minister to resign? The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Well, Mr. Speaker, our government has delivered, and today there are more services, more benefits, and more points of service for our veterans than ever before. Mr. Speaker, here are the facts. The opposition voted against expanding funeral and burial funding. They voted against career transition services. Mr. Speaker, they even voted against the Children of Deceased Veterans Education Assistance Program, Mr. Speaker.
Incredible.
We take no lessons from a party that speaks one thing and does another.
And the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Ministerial responsibility is one of the cornerstones of our democracy. This person has caused the harm. He shut down 9 veterans' offices, allowed $1.1 billion to lapse when veterans needed help, and he says it's somebody else's fault? No, Mr. Speaker, he's responsible. What is he waiting for to finally, for once in his life, do the honorable thing and resign?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we have brought in real services and real programs for our veterans, and we will continue to do so in spite of the opposition voting against every one of those items, Mr. Speaker. The reality is they voted against disability and death compensation. Yes. They voted against the earning loss and supplementary retirement benefits. Shame. They voted against the Veterans Independence Program. Mr. Speaker, I hardly think that I need to take or we need to take any lessons from a party that says one thing and does exactly the opposite.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, in 2009...
The opposition has the floor now. Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr.
Speaker, in 2009, the Justice Committee unanimously indicated that it was time to act on the disabled or the impaired driving file. I asked questions of the Prime Minister. He said he was taking it seriously and that it was a priority. 2 years later, nothing has been done.
Governments do that is more important than saving human lives. A lot of them will be posing with people from Mothers Against Drunk Driving over the holidays. Here's our only question for them. Since that unanimous report in 2009, more than 5,000 Canadians have died because of drunk driving. What are they waiting for to act?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the Leader of the Opposition. In fact, impaired driving is still the #1 criminal cause of death in this country. It's a very serious issue. He has alluded to the fact that many of us, including myself, have met with members of MAD Canada, as well as other justice groups who are advocating for changes to the criminal code. We have contemplated seriously the changes that are required, Mr. Speaker. We hope to have legislation forthcoming.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Dunderdale of Newfoundland and Labrador was there to announce that there was a deal with the federal government. $280 million would flow to Newfoundland and Labrador as compensation for the European trade deal. Now we find out that the government is imposing conditions that will mean, in practical effect, that the $280 million they promised will never flow. Why did they make the promise to Newfoundland, Labrador and break it such a short while later?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is committed to working out the details of this minimum processing requirement fund with the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. The fund was created to compensate for anticipated losses from the removal of minimum processing requirements. The fund was never intended as a blank check that would give the industry in Newfoundland and Labrador an unfair advantage over other Atlantic provinces. We've been very clear from the start that the NPR fund was to compensate for demonstrable losses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
For years, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has been promising, quote, sector-by-sector regulations to combat climate change. In 2008, he not only promised cap and trade, he promised specific regulations for oil and gas. Now, the same Prime Minister suddenly says that his own idea of promising those very regulations would be, quote, crazy. But it was his idea that he's now calling crazy. So what does it say about the Prime Minister that he considers his own ideas to be crazy?
Mr. Speaker, what's crazy is a job-killing carbon tax. To be clear, Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister said, Canada would not take unilateral action and impose taxes and monetary penalties on the oil and gas sector. This is a North American issue that needs a North American solution. We've always said we'd work together with the United States on reducing greenhouse gas emissions for the oil and gas sector, Mr. Speaker, and we're the first government in Canadian history to reduce greenhouse gas emissions whilst...
The honourable member for Westmount Ville Marie.
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, the Auditor General informed us that the Conservatives were underestimating the needs of our veterans and that demand would likely go up. So what did the minister do? Well, he eliminated 1,000 jobs, and the biggest cuts came to front-line programs for health, compensation, and transition services. The minister is not only incompetent, he's mean-spirited. Why is the Prime Minister tolerating this? When will he fire this incapable and insensitive minister?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we support our veterans. And the reality is that we voted for many of the benefits and services for veterans and their families. But let me just inventory a few of the items that the Liberal Party voted against. Veterans Independence Program, Earnings Loss Supplementary Retirement Benefits, Financial Support Program, Commonwealth Ward Graves Commission, Career Transition, Disability Allowance, and many more, Mr. Speaker. Again, the hypocrisy is more than anybody can really believe.
Honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Mr. Speaker, when it was convenient, the Prime Minister praised the new Veterans Charter. For example, in 2006, in speaking with veterans, he claimed to support the troops and noted, I quote, this Veterans Charter is one example of our government's commitments. But when it became clear how badly his government had mismanaged the supposed commitment, he rushed to blame the Charter on a previous government. The Prime Minister has been exposed for his mean-spirited neglect of our veterans. How can they possibly trust anything he says?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, since the advent of the new Veterans Charter, what this government has done consistently year after year, while the opposition have voted against, is enhance the benefits, the services, and the delivery of programs for veterans and their families. Mr. Speaker, we have been delivering for our veterans. We continue to do so while they oppose everything we do.
The honourable member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, while we believe the Conservatives should have long ago invested in mental health services for those who serve, they seem incapable of announcing money for military mental health without skirting into questionable ethical grounds. Today's announcement of a new Centre of Excellence includes funding of $500,000 from military contractor General Dynamics, who receives tens of millions of dollars in contracts from this government. In their rush for good news announcements, does the government really not see the conflict of interest created by General Dynamics contracts with D&D?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to providing the best care possible for our men and women in uniform. It was our government who boosted the mental health budget for the armed forces by over 20%. Members who are battling mental illness have greater access to specialized care more than ever before. The Canadian Armed Forces have established a new national Canadian Military Veterans Mental Health Centre of Excellence and created a chair in military mental health. When we're working in partnership with the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Centre and seek to even further opportunities to advance military-related mental health research, our brave men and women in uniform deserve nothing less.
And a member for Quebec. Mr. Speaker, 900 jobs were cut at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Over a third in the branch that provides services. 372 jobs in the health and rehabilitation branch. To hide their incompetence and their ideologically driven cuts, the Conservatives have claimed that services to veterans wouldn't be affected. But we've all seen the tragic results. Veterans who've died before receiving the care they need. And others who've taken their own lives. It doesn't make any sense, Mr. Speaker. What is the Prime Minister waiting for to fire this incompetent, completely incompetent minister? Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the work that we on this side of the House have been doing, while the opposition constantly votes against our programs and services for veterans. We have opened or announced new frontline medical facilities for veterans' mental health. We have worked with family, and we are working with family resource centers to support medically releasing veterans and their families. We've shrunk the application and the paperwork to deliver more services up front for our veterans, created new monthly financial benefits totaling thousands of dollars each year for seriously injured veterans. Mr. Speaker, they vote against all these things.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Saint-Constant. The Minister of Veterans Affairs is living on another planet. He's known for 2 years that his department can't predict future needs, but he's done nothing to fix that. And this despite a serious warning from the Auditor General, who said that his data doesn't take into account the growing needs of soldiers suffering from PTSD. Without knowing future needs, for 2 years he cut staff and closed offices in the regions. And now he needs to hire people and go back on that. It's more than time for the Prime Minister to give a great Christmas gift to veterans and fire this minister. The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, all of us on this side of the House are proud of the fact that we have been and continue to look after the needs of our veterans, their families, and of course we do that through the delivery of programs and services. But let me just give you one example, Mr. Speaker, of where the NDP voted against, and that is the disability and death compensation benefits for our veterans, Mr. Speaker. They voted against that.
The Honourable Member for Newton North Delta.
Conservatives have failed veterans every step of the way, and they refuse to take responsibility. A 2012 Auditor General's report warned that Conservative mismanagement was A, creating a mess at the Veterans Affairs, B, failing veterans in mental health issues and PTSD, and C, creating a state of confusion with frontline case managers. Conservatives' response was to cut frontline staff and close regional offices. It is inexcusable. When will they finally fire this minister?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we've brought in real services and real programs for our veterans, and we will continue to do so in spite of the NDP voting against all of these things. The reality is they keep voting against every single program or measure that we've been bringing forward. Again, I repeat, against disability and death compensation, against earnings loss and supplementary retirement benefits, against the Veterans Independence Program. Mr. Speaker, there's no lessons to be learned at this side of the House from that party who votes against the very things that we're trying to achieve for our veterans.
The Honourable Member for Beaches East York.
Mr. Speaker, in the 39th, 40th, and again in this 41st Parliament, this party has tabled legislation, the Climate Change Accountability Act, that would commit Canada to emission reduction targets. That's a consistent determination to preserve this planet for our kids. Contrast that, Mr. Speaker, with a Prime Minister who once called meeting emission targets a, quote, important objective, but now, having missed every target, he calls emission regulation, quote, crazy. How does it happen that the Prime Minister's once important objective became crazy?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, what's crazy is a job-killing carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, our government is the government that's reducing emissions while supporting economic growth and job creation. And we're achieving this without the crazy policies of the NDP. In 2012, greenhouse gas emissions were 5.1 lower than the 2005 levels, while the economy grew by 10.6% during the same period. Canada's 2020 greenhouse gas emissions are projected to be 130 megatons lower than they would have been under the Liberals, Mr. Speaker, and that's real leadership.
The Honourable Member for Halifax.
Because the Conservatives refuse to require the oil and gas sector to do its part, other sectors are going to have to do more so that we meet our promises to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The manufacturing sector, for example, which has already done a lot of heavy lifting, will have to compensate for the Conservatives' inaction. How can the Prime Minister justify that some sectors have to pay the bill while the oil and gas sector doesn't. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our government's record is clear, and we've taken decisive action on the environment while protecting our economy. We'll continue to implement the sector-by-sector regulatory approach to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that protects the environment and supports economic prosperity. And building on these actions, Mr. Speaker, we recently announced that we'll be taking action to limit the growth of HFCs, which are the most potent and fastest-growing greenhouse gases in the world. And we'll do that without putting economic penalties on our oil and gas sector and without a job-killing carbon tax.
The honourable member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, with their sector-by-sector approach, oil and gas, that is the sector with the biggest GHG emissions, and there's no way for Canada to meet its obligations without regulating that sector.
That's right.
So the PM says he wants to align Canada's oil and gas regs with the U.S., but neither the minister nor the parliamentary secretary could say if he's proposed continent-wide regulations to the Americans. So I'll ask again, what regulations has the government proposed to the United States?
Here. The honourable parliamentary secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, the Prime Minister said Canada would not take unilateral action and impose taxes and monetary penalties on the oil and gas sector. But what the opposition has said is they would impose taxes and monetary penalties on the oil and gas sector. Mr. Speaker, the opposition also said they would act unilaterally to impose a job-killing carbon tax. And the opposition parties would gamble, Mr. Speaker, with 275,000 jobs in Canada. Our government's not going to do that, Mr. Speaker. We're going to support hardworking Canadians, and we're going to do that, Mr. Speaker, without the crazy taxes of the NDP.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, the Secretariat responsible for F-35 procurement has published an update on the file. As expected, the bill for Canadians has gone up again. We're now at $45.8 billion for the purchase, maintenance, and use of the F-35s. And as if that wasn't enough, the last plane won't be ready until 2025. This file is total chaos, and Canadians want to know how their money is being spent. Will the minister finally commit to an open and transparent procurement process? The Honourable Minister for Public Works.
As I've said before, no decision has been made on replacing the F-18 fleet. We do want to make sure that our men and women in uniform have the equipment they need, which is why we're doing a life extension on the F-18s so that they can run right through till 2015. Yep. Mr. Speaker, in our commitment to transparency, we released 3 reports yesterday and all of the unclassified reports, and all of the information therein will be taken into consideration when a decision is made.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, rising costs and slipping times of the F-35s were laid out in careful detail in yesterday's independent review report. There could be $1 billion more in cost, and the final purchase pushed back to 2025. A far cry from the $9 billion originally claimed in 2010. The report also says 3 other jets could equally meet Canada's needs. So will the Conservatives be having an open competition, or are they still in favour of a sole-sourced purchase of the F-35?
The Honourable Minister of Public Works.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, no decision has been taken. As part of our 7-point plan, we commissioned several reports. Those are being evaluated. In fact, they've been released publicly. They were tabled yesterday. The information in those will be considered when a decision is made. But meanwhile, to make sure that our men and women in uniform have the equipment they need, we're doing life extensions so that the F-18 fleet can continue through 2025. Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, the NDP, the No Defence Party, have been arguing to buy absolutely nothing to support our troops.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, the government has had these reports in its hands for months. The Pentagon has documents showing that we've already asked for earlier purchase of the F-35, and there's an entire secretariat devoted to this. So it hardly seems likely that a decision hasn't already been made. Can the minister tell us whether this proposed purchase has actually gone to Cabinet?
The Honourable Minister of Public Works.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how to make it more clear. No decision has been made. We're going to consider all of the information that has been prepared in the various reports that were made public yesterday, evaluating the different options to make sure that our men and women in uniform get the equipment they need at a price that's responsible to taxpayers. Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that the troops have the equipment they need by doing life extension to 2025 on the F-18s.
Honourable Member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, at least 160 Canadians who served this country bravely died by suicide over the last decade. This Conservative government was warned 2 years ago by the AG it was unprepared for dealing with veterans' mental health. It was told again this year that the wait time for mental health services was unacceptable, that any member of this government can stand up and say they're doing a good job without any sense of shame is an insult to the memory of anyone lost because of their inaction. This minister has allowed us to get to this point of crisis. When will he do the right thing and resign?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as recently announced, there's a number of initiatives that we've undertaken that will, in fact, address the mental health situation. And that is something that we have been doing all along, Mr. Speaker. There's initiatives underway that will enhance the service delivery at the front line. There's new clinics and expanded clinics being put in place. Mr. Speaker, we have been responding and will be continuing to do that to the mental health needs of our veterans and their families.
The Honourable Member for St. Paul's.
Newly elected National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Perry Bellegarde, vowed yesterday to keep pushing for a national public inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Earlier this week, Canada witnessed the courage and eloquence of Renelle Harper as she added her voice to the calls for an inquiry. Will the Prime Minister get on the right side of history and immediately call a national public inquiry so we can put an end to this ongoing national tragedy?
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as I've said before, we know that different victims have different views, and we respect the views of all of these victims. What happened to Renelle Harper was appalling and a horrific crime, and our thoughts and prayers are with her as well as with her family. Thanks to her family's brave decision to move forward and work with police, we have apprehended the attackers, something extremely important to this. Our government is very focused on making sure victims are supported and that those that commit these crimes are apprehended and put behind bars. We've moved forward with the Victims' Bill of Rights, as well as a number of other initiatives. This government's focused on doing the right actions, unlike the opposition.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives themselves admit that there has been no progress over the last 5 years in the fight against the underground economy. And what are they calling for? Well, a committee with absolutely no target. What's more, for 2 years they've been blocking requests from the Parliamentary Budget Officer for a budget to calculate the billions of dollars in tax havens, while the rest of the G7 has already figured that out. Mr. Speaker, is there anyone in the Conservative government who's worried about tax evasion? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to say that just a few weeks ago in Toronto, I launched a ministerial advisory committee on the underground economy to highlight all our efforts that have been extremely successful in that area and our enhanced approach to the underground economy, which I also tabled in this House, Mr. Speaker, because we are taking that very seriously. And as far as the PBO is concerned, we are working with the PBO. There is an issue as to how much we can share with them. We're working on it jointly.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, when Canada decides to use intelligence obtained through so-called enhanced interrogation techniques, that implies the Conservatives condone things like forcing detainees to stand up despite injuries, making sexual threats against detainees' family members, and depriving detainees of sleep for over a week at a time. Does the minister condemn torture, and if so, will he stop receiving intelligence obtained through torture? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I would remind my honourable colleague that the topic she has raised is a matter of American politics, but Canada does not condone torture. If information is brought to our intelligence service, and if that can save a Canadian's life, it will certainly be taken into account. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the U.S. Senate report on the CIA's so-called enhanced interrogation techniques is very clear. Torture is not only morally wrong, it does not work. Information obtained through torture is unreliable. And yet, despite this, the Conservatives have directed Canadian security agencies to use and share information obtained through torture. Why is the minister making Canadian agencies go along to get along with states that torture?
Here, 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 here. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. Canada does not condone the use of torture. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Welland.
Mr. Speaker, in October, when farmers of North America expressed interest in buying the Wheat Board's assets, Conservatives said, well, there's no time. But then they changed their mind and said, oh, we'll give you a month. Well, a month to put a bid together as complex as that was hardly enough time. So guess what? The bid, it's rejected. But then private companies, they're allowed to bid on it. And guess what? No timeline. So the CWB is still considering offers from private companies. So why did Conservatives impose a timeline on farmers, but not on multinational corporations? Why does this minister not want farmers to actually own the Canadian Wheat Board?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Well, Mr. Speaker, absolutely none of that was true. The member from Welland should actually get better research. He could maybe talk to the Wheat Board itself, or I'd be happy to give him a briefing. The farmers of North America imposed their own timeline, trying to find out from farmers if there was any kind of desire to put together the several $100 million it would take to actually be a serious contender. They never did that, Mr. Speaker. They actually never did put forward a serious bid. If they had, it would have been adjudicated along with everyone else by the CWB, working in consort with an international accounting and legal team to ascertain the best bid forward.
The Honourable Member for Welland.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, the folks who wanted to actually make the bid would impose timelines on themselves so they could actually derail their own bid. Makes perfect sense, especially coming from this minister. But the Wheat Board assets actually are public. They should be for sale, and they should actually benefit farmers. But the board's management seems determined not to sell the assets to interested farmers. It seems they would rather prefer to give a sweetheart deal to a foreign multinational. Can the minister state, for the House and for the record, if he's aware of any kind of bonus, special compensation, or any incentive that will go to the executive management of what is now the Wheat Board of Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is not a political process. As we've said, when we legislated, put that bill forward in October of 2011, this is following the timeline, following the outline that was prescribed within that. The Wheat Board themselves, the directors there, have decided to expedite to bring stability to what they're offering Western Canadian farmers predominantly. But they've increased their footprint across Canada with the purchase of Mission Terminal and loading facilities in Quebec. Should that come to fruition in the coming months or a couple of years that they have in that timeline, Mr. Speaker, that'll be a wonderful thing, bringing that stability. As to bonuses and so on, that's certainly the purview of the Wheat Board, not mine.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Poland's Defense Minister Tomasz Siemoniak says that there has been unprecedented activity by Russia's Navy and Air Force in the Baltic Sea region in recent days. He also says that this is evidence of Russia testing and probing NATO, and this does not in any way help to build good relations and trust. Given this spike in activity, can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence please update this House on Canada's contribution to NATO's Ukrainian assurance measures? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for Etobicoke Centre for his great support for Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, there's indeed been increased activity in the Baltic Sea region by Russian forces, and our CF-18 pilots continue to witness it firsthand. Yesterday morning, 2 CF-18 Hornets based in Lithuania were scrambled to respond to non-NATO aircraft off the Baltic coast and intercepted a Russian transport aircraft and a Russian surveillance plane. This time, however, these Russian planes had an escort, 4 Russian MiG-31 Foxhound fighter jets. Our CF-18 shadowed this Russian formation for approximately an hour. Make no mistake, Mr. Speaker, Canada continues to stand with our NATO allies in the face of Russian military aggression.
The honourable member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Last week, the parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister turned up empty-handed at the UPA Congress, and he raised concern among farmers and cheesemakers by saying, in the event of losses stemming from the trade deal with Europe, they would get compensation. In Brussels, when the Prime Minister promised compensation, there were no ifs or maybes about it. The uncertainty created by the Conservatives is bad for investment. Cheesemakers want to know, how are the Conservatives going to evaluate their losses? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate and thank the Parliamentary Secretary for his attendance at the UPA. He did a great job of representing the government, and yes, he defended cheesemakers and dairy farmers because we keep our word here. We signed a deal, and we are providing compensation. People were glad to hear the Parliamentary Secretary say that we will be there for our farmers and we will continue to defend them. Thank you.
If that's a promise, let's see the details in writing. Mr. Speaker, I'll remind Conservatives they also promised to compensate Newfoundland and Labrador for giving up rules that protect our fish processing jobs. What happened to that promise? Now, tomorrow the Premier is coming to Ottawa to meet with the Prime Minister to find out what happened. Will the Prime Minister agree to honour the terms of the commitment that he made, or will this be a replay of the foot-dragging, promise-breaking disrespect and contempt Conservatives showed to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians with the Atlantic Accord?
The Honourable Minister of State for
Mr. Speaker, the member should better inform himself on this file. This fund was created to compensate for anticipated losses from the removal of minimum processing requirements. The fund was never intended as a blank check that would give the industry in Newfoundland and Labrador an unfair advantage over other Atlantic provinces. Mr. Speaker, the Canada-European Union Trade Agreement represents an unprecedented opportunity for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, and it would be a shame for anything to interfere with that. We've been very clear from the start that the NPR fund was to compensate for demonstrated losses.
The Honourable Member for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce-Lachine. The first post office to be closed in Canada, the first victim of Conservative cuts, was in Lachine, in my riding. And with the end of home delivery, complaints from constituents have gone through the roof. People with reduced mobility, seniors, and everyone who cares about this essential service. Will the Conservatives finally pay attention to the public and restore home delivery? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, I remind the member that the decision with respect to home delivery is that of Canada Post, an independent arm's-length Crown corporation. They did so, Mr. Speaker, as part of their 5-point plan in response to the fact that they're delivering 1.2 billion fewer letters in 2013 when compared to 2006. Mr. Speaker, I remind the member that as they do this, 2/3 of Canadians currently do not have door-to-door delivery, and that Canada Post, in terms of balancing its finances, it has a responsibility to do so. We expect them to do that without being a burden to taxpayers.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, last year, an hour after Canada Post's announcement, the Minister agreed, so it's not independent. It's not true. The Minister decided to ignore the public interest by ending home delivery. While other countries like Germany are adding banking services to postal services, the Conservatives are just making cuts. A year after the tragic announcement, will the Conservatives finally pay attention to the public anger and the woes of the municipalities and people with reduced mobility and restore home delivery? Will they make it profitable? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Once again, another message brought to you by Cup W, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure they wrote that for the member opposite, but Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. Canada Post has posted 3 consecutive years of losses. That's primarily because they're delivering a significant amount less mail than they were only years ago, Mr. Speaker. 1.2 billion fewer letters, Mr. Speaker. They have a responsibility under law to operate in a way that is financially sustainable. They have taken action with respect to a 5-point plan, Mr. Speaker. We expect them to do it without being a burden to taxpayers.
Honourable member for Scarborough-Gilroy.
Mr. Speaker, according to the Prime Minister, it's crazy to keep your Copenhagen promises and regulate the oil and gas industry at any price per barrel. What's even more crazy is to blow off Presidents Obama and Holland and Prime Minister Cameron and Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. It's crazy to blow off the Lima Climate Change Conference. It's crazy to embarrass your minister. Mind you, she does a pretty good job of it all by herself. Why not just keep this crazy train going, Mr. Speaker, and actually regulate the oil and gas industry? Thank you.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary and Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister said, Canada would not take unilateral action and impose taxes and monetary penalties on the oil and gas sector. Now let's take a look at the Liberal record, Mr. Speaker. When they were in power, they signed on to the Kyoto Accord without any plan, without any details, and we saw greenhouse gases go up 30%, Mr. Speaker. We're working with our partners in the United States so that we take a North American solution to this. We always said we'd like to work together with the United States, and we're going to do it without a job-killing carbon tax.
For Halifax West.
Mr. Speaker, the government's failure to champion strong environmental policies is damaging our economy and killing jobs. Their neoconservative ideology is hindering the ability of our exporters to get their products to market. When the Prime Minister broke his promise to regulate greenhouse gases, he once again damaged the petroleum sector. What kind of crazy economics is that?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, what would be crazy is the Liberals' plan. As I said earlier, they would take unilateral action to impose taxes and monetary penalties on the oil and gas sector. They would act unilaterally to impose a job-killing carbon tax. They would gamble, Mr. Speaker, with 275,000 jobs. Mr. Speaker, we're not going to do that. We're going to support hardworking Canadians because we believe in this side that we're the only party that can be trusted to lower greenhouse gas emissions while growing the economy, Mr. Speaker. And that's real leadership.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellon. Mr. Speaker, cuts of $687 million to public safety will force the closure of the intensive supervision program for the most dangerous offenders. We're talking about protecting society from sex offenders, bikers, and mobsters, and stopping them from getting back onto our streets without close supervision. This is totally unacceptable. The program is highly successful and it stood the test of time. Will the minister reverse his decision to axe this program? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, it would have been nice to have the support of the NDP when in successive budgets we increase funding for policing and for the Canadian Border Services Agency and for CSIS. We've increased by around 26% the number of positions. So we'd like the NDP to support us when it comes to increasing funding to increase public safety.
Despite the Minister for the Status of Women's answer from yesterday, the reality is the government's so-called action plan to end violence against Aboriginal women ignores women living in northern communities. Inuit women are 11 times more likely to be victims of violent crimes. 11 times, Mr. Speaker. Does the minister agree it's not just about supporting victims and that more needs to be done to address the causes of violence in northern communities?
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I guess this government has been acting and doing a significant number of things to make sure that we're standing up for victims and punishing criminals. So let me list some. A Victims' Bill of Rights Act, a DNA-based missing persons index, new laws to protect victims and make sure that those that are being harassed are put behind Those that are being harassed know that those that are harassing them are put behind bars. A new bill on zero tolerance for barbaric practices, our Safe Streets and Communities Act. Our government is acting for Northern Canadians and Canadians across the country. Why aren't they supporting us in doing so?
The honourable member for Saskatoon-Humboldt.
Mr. Speaker, the government continues to provide regular updates to Canadians in this House on Operation Impact and the ongoing efforts of our forces to confront and degrade the military capability of the terrorist group ISIL. Unlike the previous Liberal government, who sent armed forces to Afghanistan without a debate or vote in Parliament, this government put forward a motion which clearly defines the motives, parameters and goals of Canada's contribution to fight ISIL. As we come to the end of this parliamentary sitting, can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence please once again update the House on Operation Impact?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Saskatoon-Humboldt is correct in that our government has facilitated multiple technical briefings from the military for Canadians on the mission in Iraq. We have also made numerous statements in this House regarding our airstrikes, and in that tradition, I can confirm that yesterday our CF-18s dropped a bomb on an ISIL vehicle checkpoint about 250 kilometers to the southwest of Mosul. Unlike the Liberals, who didn't even bother consulting Parliament when they sent our armed forces to Afghanistan, our government is being open and transparent with Canadians.
The honourable member for Cardigan.
Mr. Speaker, we know the government has done nothing with the Cohen Commission report. We know they've devastated fish habitat protection and scientific research on the West Coast. We also know the importance of Justice Cohen's placed on migratory paths of the Fraser River sockeye. Is the government going to allow the expansion of aquaculture facilities in the migratory path of the sockeye, or will they wait until the crucial research being done by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans is completed?
The Honourable Minister for Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, BC salmon is very important to our government, as is to all British Columbians. When my parliamentary secretary first proposed a motion calling for a judicial inquiry into the decline of the Fraser River sockeye back in 2004, it was the Liberals that teamed up with the Bloc Québécois to vote it down, Mr. Speaker. So I'm very happy to report that the Fraser River sockeye returns are very strong this year, Mr. Speaker. The final in-season run for Fraser sockeye was nearly 20 million fish, Mr. Speaker, and we've introduced several measures that are consistent with recommendations from Justice Cohen.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-Les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, good news coverage is coverage that's about us, who we are, and what's going on in our lives. Today it's been announced that half of the regional news programs are getting a shave in Saguenay, Rimouski, Fredericton, and Calgary, to name but a few, where the news is being cut from an hour to half an hour. Our public broadcaster is literally suffering death by 1,000 cuts. How can the minister allow the regions to lose half their news coverage? Are we second-class citizens? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, that's simply not the case, Mr. Speaker. The CBC is solely responsible for its day-to-day operations, including decisions with respect to programming and also with respect to human resource management. Our government respects the CBC's independence as an arm's-length Crown corporation. It'd be nice to hear before Christmas the NDP agree with us on that point.
The member for Provencher.
Mr. Speaker, our government committed to taking actions to ensure that Canadians are not paying higher prices simply because of where they live. The unexplained and often significant price gap between Canadian and U.S. prices for the same products is a frustrating reality for Canadian consumers. These price differences are real, and they hurt the bottom line and pockets of Canadian consumers. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry please update this House on the action that our government has taken to tackle this very real problem?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Mr. Speaker, thank the Honourable Member from Provencher for the great question. Our government believes that hardworking Canadians and their families shouldn't be charged higher prices than Americans simply because of where they live. That is why we tabled the Price Transparency Act, which will give Canada's Commissioner of Competition the power to investigate price discrimination and expose it. The intentional manipulation of prices on identical goods for sale in Canada and the U.S. places an unfair burden on Canadians and is simply wrong. Mr. Speaker, this government will continue to and will always stand up for the interests of Canadian consumers.
The honourable member for Gaspésie, Île-de-la-Madeleine. Public Works is responsible for the Van Horn Bridge between Quebec and New Brunswick. Unfortunately, the sidewalks are not being cleared of snow. The minister forgot to negotiate an arrangement for snow removal. We got 40 centimeters of snow yesterday in the area, and the communities of Listigouche, Pointe-à-la-Croix, and Campbellton feel abandoned by this government. Will they now make sure that the sidewalks are accessible? The Honourable Minister.
Public Works is responsible for most of the properties, but the management of those buildings is usually subcontracted. I'm not familiar with the case that the member is discussing, but I would be happy to get back to him about it.
Good answer.
The honourable member for Edmonton, St. Albert.
Mr. Speaker, like most actual Conservatives who believe in markets, I was amused by the Ministry of Industry's stage photo op in a toy store on Tuesday. I find the notion that somehow merchants can be shamed by the Competition Bureau into lowering their prices is to use the Prime Minister's new economic qualifier, a crazy economic policy. If the Minister of Industry is really interested in preventing price gouging, why doesn't he look at some of his government's own marketing distorting policies that increase consumer prices like tariffs, fuel taxes, an oligopolistic telecom market, and even supply management?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on average, Canadians pay roughly...
Order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary has the floor, and I'll ask members to come to order so he can answer the question.
On average, Canadians pay roughly 15% more for goods in Canada compared to those available in the U.S. These price differences are real. They hurt the bottom line of hardworking families. And, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to stand up for hardworking Canadian families. While I'm on my feet, Mr. Speaker, isn't this jacket awesome?
I can't see it from here, so I'm in no position to judge. But I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of members from the group Fostering Open Expression Among Youth, who are the winners of the $1 million 2014 Arctic Inspiration Prize. Pursuant to an order made Tuesday, December 9th, 2014, the House will now resolve itself into Committee of the Whole to thank the House of Commons security personnel following the events of October 22nd, 2014. I do now leave the chair for the House to resolve itself into Committee of the Whole. I would like to acknowledge on behalf of all honourable members the courage, professionalism and dedication of the personnel of the Protective Service of the House of Commons. It va sans dire que...
It goes without saying that we owe them everything. Under the direction of Sergeant-at-Arms Kevin Victors and Director General Patrick O'Connell,
Le Service de Protection,
the Protection Service of the House of Commons, has been a reassuring presence in the House of Commons. Every day, its remarkable teams show their commitment to the security of the members of Parliament, the employees, and
their quick response during the attack in Centre Block most certainly prevented an even more tragic conclusion to the day's events. As honourable members will know, Constable Samrin Son, a valued member of the House of Commons Protective Service for 10 years, a valued member of the House of Commons Protective Service for 10 years, was injured while attempting to disarm the gunman despite being unarmed himself. His selfless action, putting his own body in harm's way, was a stunning example of bravery and brought further honor and esteem to the Protective Service. We also remember those constables who stood guard, protecting parliamentarians, employees, and others who waited to receive word that all was clear, how they provided reassurance in the early moments following the gunfire and remained calm in the performance of their duties as lockdown continued throughout the night and into the evening. Tout au long de la journée, en plus...
Throughout the day, in addition, by doing their duty, they showed a great deal of generosity.
In Canada for the first time was in the midst of a tour of Parliament when the incident began. While they were safely ushered to a secure area, their group had been split over 2 different tours and now found themselves separated and anxious about their classmates and fellow teachers. Constables were able to account for the full group and provide assurance that everyone was safe. In the midst of everything that was going on, I can only imagine the measure of relief that this brought to the teachers and parents accompanying their group. The response on October 22nd was certainly a team effort, as much a result of rigorous training and skilled leadership as it was the product of individual bravery and basic kindness.
It is also important to underscore the aid provided by the administration of the House of Commons and many parliamentary services who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to help frontline personnel of the protective services and to ensure that the activities of Parliament could resume quickly.
All share were aptly captured by the chair of the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, the member for Elgin Middlesex London, when he recently stated, "We had acquaintances with some of the constables up until that day. I think we have formed lifelong friendships with some of them now." On behalf of all members, it is a sincere honor to express our gratitude here today to all the men and women of the House of Commons Protective Service. We know we are safer because of you, and your actions will not be forgotten by anyone in the Parliament Hill community. Just before they leave, I'd just like to remind honourable members that there will be a reception for members in room 253D, so we can personally convey our gratitude. Thank you. And now it being Thursday, the honourable member for Burnaby, New Westminster would no doubt like to pose a Thursday question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And honestly, it's heartwarming to be able to thank the security guards for their courage and dedication that they showed on October 22nd.
Profoundly moving, Mr. Speaker, to be able to show the appreciation that we've just shown to the security guards that showed such incredible bravery on October 22nd. And
now, Mr. Speaker, we have 15 sitting weeks once we come back in January. That's 30 weeks before the election.
Mr. Speaker, and 30 weeks in all before the next elections. I know many people are looking forward to that.
And I'm very pleased to rise today to ask the Thursday question, the last one before Christmas, and to be able to thank everyone who contributes to the life we have here in this House, people who work very, very hard. And I'm pleased that we can return to our ridings to work on behalf of our constituents in the next days, to celebrate the holidays and Christmas with our family and friends, and to reflect on the work that we do here on behalf of all Canadians.